Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Burke here. I'm going to do a video lesson today that shows you how you can convert measures of time. And for today's lesson, we're going to be using the following measures. You should realize that 60 seconds is going to equal 1 minute. Then 60 minutes turns into 1 hour. Once you have 24 hours, it becomes 1 day. Then 7 days can convert to 1 week. Once you have 52 weeks, it becomes a year. 12 months also becomes 1 year. And finally, 365 days become 1 year. So these are the common units of time that we're going to be working with today. And we're going to change from larger units, like years, to smaller units, such as days, or from smaller units like weeks into larger units like months. So we'll go over a few examples. So our first example, we are going to convert from weeks to days. So we're going from a larger unit of weeks to a smaller unit, which is days. Now, I like to set this up the same way that I set up when I would convert my customary units of measure. So I'm going to use my reference sheet, and I'm going to look for the equation that helps me to solve a conversion from weeks to days. And in my list here, I do see a weeks to days conversion. So the first thing I want to make sure when solving this is that I line up the units right underneath each other. So underneath weeks, I'm going to put another unit of weeks. And then underneath days, I'm going to put another unit of days. And now I'm going to fill in the missing number. Weeks would be 1 week, and that is the same as 7 days. So even though on my chart it says 7 days equals 1 week, you can flip around and say 1 week equals 7 days. Still the same equation. So now let's look to see what I need to do. I'm going from weeks to days, and that's what I did over here. And when I went from weeks to days, you can see my unit of 1 turned into a 7, so it got larger. So to make whole numbers larger, we multiply. And down here, it looks like I multiplied by 7. So that's the same thing I'm going to want to do to my 4 weeks. Multiply it by 7. And now 4 times 7 equals 28. So 4 weeks equals 28 days. All right, let's try another one. Here I have 260 weeks, and I want to know how many years that is. So I'm going from a smaller unit to a larger unit. So I want to find out an equation that will help me with that. I'm looking for a weeks to years equation, and I found it right here. Weeks, 52 weeks equals 1 year. So I'm going to set this up. Weeks, remember I want to line up the same unit, and I want to turn them into years. And the equation I'm going to use is 52 weeks equals 1 year. Now I'm going from weeks to years, which I did here. Now for this equation, my number went from 52 all the way to 1. So when I have a whole number that gets smaller, that's going to be division. Now 52 divided by what would get me 1? Divided by 52 gets me 1. So that means I want to divide 260 divided by 52. So I can do that over here. You can use estimating to help you. If you want to count by 50s, 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. My guess it's going to be about 5 years. So 52, do it over here. Let's see what 52 times 5 is. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 more is 26. So I was right using my estimating strategy. that 52 weeks is equivalent to 5 years. All right, let's move on to the next. We have 4 years is how many days? So I'm going from a larger unit of years to smaller units of days, and I want to see what equation will help me with that. I see days and weeks, that doesn't quite match up, and I'm looking for days and years, which is right down here. 365 days equals 1 year. So that's going to be the equation I'm working with. Now remember, I want to line up the units. So this will have to be my years, and this will have to be my days. So 365 goes with my days, and then 1 year. All right, so I'm going from years to days. Now when I went from 1 to 365, my whole number got bigger, so I'm multiplying. 1 times 365 is 365. So I want to do the same thing to my 4 years. Times it by 365. So let me get some scrap paper over here. 365 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20. 6 times 4 is 24, plus 2 more is 26. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2 more is 14. So it would be 1,460 days in 4 years. And you again can estimate, this is about, let's just say 400 to make it easy. 400 times 4 would be 1,600 days, and this is pretty close to 1,600 days. So it's a good answer. All right, let's get into days and hours. 6 days is how many hours? What equation do you think will help us with that? 6 days is how many hours? Hopefully you're looking at this equation that shows us hours and days. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to line up the same units and fill in the number that goes with it. So I have 24 hours is 1 day. I'm going from days to hours. I went from 1 to 24, so I multiplied by 24, which is what I'm going to do to my 6. So now 24 hours times 6 days gives me 144 hours. Okay, we'll do one more conversion equation. 480 minutes is how many hours? So what equation would you plan on using? 480 minutes is how many hours? You should be looking at this one. So I have 60 minutes is 1 hour. I want to fill in the correct units. 60 minutes, 1 hour. And for this one, my number got smaller. I went from 60 to 1. So I divided by 60. So I'm going to do the same here. And remember, you can use your division basic facts. 480 divided by 60. I know 48 divided by 6 is 8. And then I divide out 10 and 10, so I'm left with 8. So 8 hours is equivalent to 480 minutes. All right, and before we go, let's take a look at one word problem that we can use here. All right, so it says, the Martins took a cross-country road trip. They spent 20 days on the East Coast, 16 days on the West Coast, and 27 days in the South. And they want to know how many weeks was their trip. So you should have noticed that we have a unit of days, a unit of days, a unit of days, but then we're looking for weeks. So we do know that we're going to have to make a conversion. And let's see what our first step should be first. Before we convert, we have to find out the total number of days that they were on their trip. So it was 20 on the east, 16 on the west, and 27 on the south. So my first step is going to be to add up 20 from the East Coast plus 16 from the West Coast, and then 27 from the South. So all together, they spent 63, remember these were days, 63 days on their trip. So my job is to find out 63 days is how many weeks. Now, the equation that will help me with this is my days to weeks equation. So days to weeks, and we have 7 days in 1 week. So I went smaller, so I divided, which means I'm gonna divide 63 divided by 7, okay? So 63 divided by 7 equals 9. So they spent 9 weeks on the road. All right, great job with this, boys and girls. Work hard, take your time, and use these conversions, use these units. It's gonna be what helps you through this. All right, good luck.